Hey everyone, my name's Gunther and welcome to Oasis Zoo. And thanks for checking the channel out today, we really appreciate it. Now, as many of you know, Oasis Zoo has been around for some time and we've really focused on developing and expanding our horizons. We started off with not a whole lot, and in fact we made some poor financial decisions which really made it difficult for us to kind of continue with our mandate, which is to help educate the population on these amazing North African animals. That being said, we've finally achieved a position where we actually have the money to continue to expand, and expand we have with our Fennec Fox exhibit. The idea behind this was to really focus on an animal that is the world's smallest fox, and arguably has the largest ears on a fox. So they are quite adorable when it comes to animals that we're really kind of focusing on. Now, the Fennec Fox is native to North Africa. They actually live in the deserts, so it's a little bit of a unique build in the sense that we're not going to have any grassland items that we're going to place in this. Now, our zoo has always had the mandate to educate, and we're really focusing on that education aspect here. In fact, we're finally coming up with the idea of more research, and you're going to see that a little bit later in this build. We're going to focus a lot more on research for what we can provide, because that is, again, our mandate overall. Now, going into the actual build, so you can kind of see we're placing down the footprint here. It's all going to be plaster, as is normal for our overall build, and it worked out quite well. Now, you are going to notice we have removed our guest facilities. Specifically, they no longer have access to food or water, which, considering we are in the desert, is a little bit of a concern, but have no fear. Part of our transition from our North African section of our zoo to our Central Africa section of our zoo is going to have something very similar to like Cairo's alleyways, where we're going to have a lot of our guest facilities there. I'm really excited to kind of bring that there. I haven't really played around with it a whole lot when it comes to this. I'm a little nervous in building it, but I'm looking forward to it at the same time. Now, our Fennec Fox exhibit is going to have some unique features, specifically bigger windows. This is going to be the first time I've ever built windows as big as they have been, but I'm really happy with how they turned out. And I think actually it's going to be my new favorite way of building windows for an indoor-outdoor habitat. On top of that, our zoo is not just focused on education when it comes to an animal perspective and conservation for that, but we're also focused on conservation for nature in general. And we're going to build our first terrarium. You saw we placed down the initial foundation for that terrarium. Now, in an ideal world, in a realistic world, we would have so much more when it comes to that type of exhibit, where we would actually see more education aspects associated with the type of vegetation you would naturally find within an African biome. That being said, this is a game. We can't really quite get to that point just yet. Maybe one day, but hopefully we will get there. Now, we're slowly taking shape for our overall exhibit. Now, I'm going to be honest with you, I didn't really have a whole good idea of what I wanted to do here. I had a few things I knew I wanted to do, but I did this a lot of, mostly freeform. Typically, when it comes to a build for an episode of Oasis Zoo, my normal process is to build it outside of the game in sandbox mode first, and really not too in-depth, but just kind of give a rough estimate. With this particular build, though, I decided to go against that, and I actually went forward with building just a regular habitat from scratch. And this is actually the second time I built it. I deleted the first one because I felt that it just didn't quite work the way I wanted it to work. Now, we're slowly kind of coming in with the idea. We're making our centerpiece. Our centerpiece is going to be this large rock idea. I don't know the best way to explain it, but the idea behind it is that we would have a central rock that the Fennec Foxes could climb. They could hang out on, they could lounge on the top and sunbathe if they chose to, and then on the inside we would have their indoor habitat. Now, this is I did everything with our aquatic rocks. You can kind of see that I was putting it together. In hindsight, probably should have dyed the rocks the color I wanted first before building them, but again, this is a learning experience, and the entire idea of this entire channel and this entire series was just to challenge myself to build bigger and better. And I actually think I achieved that. And let me know what you think. Leave a comment. You let me know how you felt I've progressed since the first episode with what we've built. Now, I'm a little concerned, or I was a little concerned with the size of the enclosure for their shelter. I'm a little worried that maybe it wasn't going to be quite large enough, but I think it's going to work out. Now, the other thing I wanted to do is I wanted to break up a lot of the sand, because this is a fox focus in the desert biome. There's going to be a lot of sand and dirt. There's not going to be a lot of grass or anything like that to hide it, so I wanted to use rocks. You can actually see I placed down a bunch of rocks, just changed my mind after the fact and deleted them. On top of that, when it comes to our rocks that we're really focusing on, I've learned, a lot of it coming from watching other YouTubers, in the sense of using other natural rocks to break up the same color that we're seeing from one rock. Now you can kind of see where I'm finally starting to choose a color for the rocks. I don't know if this is the right color, but I think it worked out in the end because we used some vegetation again to break it up. But again, in hindsight, probably should have dyed the rocks before I actually got any further. You can see I struggled just a tad when it comes to fixing this error in my build. All right, so we finally have it. We're continuing to use some more natural stones to break up the overall build, using the aquatic, my apologies, rocks. They're very man-made. It's apparent that they're man-made. That's the entire idea behind it. When you have these types of exhibits, you're always going to have man-made aspects built into it. Now, to help kind of break it up again, I wanted to put some more stones out in the sand. In hindsight, probably should have turned on the random rotation. Didn't do that. That's on me. And then I used the dirt to kind of break up the sand as well, give it a little bit more depth. Now we're finally getting to the foliage, and this is where everything starts to come together. And I think I didn't really have that much of a vision when it comes to it. I knew what I wanted to do, but seeing the foliage go down and all the grass, the trees, things like that, it really brought it together to kind of make it a little bit more of an actual exhibit. I was a little nervous, but I'm happy with how it turned out. Now we're going to continue with my idea of using yellow grass with the green grass to kind of break it up and make it look a little bit more realistic. You would normally not see this much green grass in the desert, so the yellow grass kind of breaks it up. And then of course we're using our little shrubs to in all the crevices and cracks of our stones to kind of give it again a little bit more 3D depth when it comes to the overall feel of nature. Now we're also going to add in some additional foliage as well. I will admit I kind of got a little slap heavy when it came to the grass, and then I remember that these bushes, so I placed down the bushes as well, and this is kind of where we see it start to come together overall. So the build's turning out really well. We're quite happy with it. I thought about putting some type of like tree on the top. I really wanted to have the idea of like a tree growing through the cracks, and it would kind of like symbolize, life in the harshest of places, which is in this case the African deserts. So decided against it. Couldn't really get where I wanted it to. I was also a little worried that we were gonna build something that was gonna just not be accessible by our Fennec Foxes, and we didn't really want to do that. Our habitat's finally put together. We put up our barriers. Again, I struggle a little bit when it comes to the null barriers, but it's up and running, and it is barely enough size to support all 5 Fennec Foxes. So Fennec Foxes can only have 5 in their pack in general, so we really wanted to focus on that. And we've seen the error of our ways in the terms of building something that just didn't quite meet the size requirements. Now this, coming back to the window as well, this is probably the first time in this series that I utilized more modern architecture when it comes to building our windows. Now you can see I struggled a little bit with getting this straight, but I finally got it. And this extra little taste of modernization really brought it home for making this interior section look a little bit more realistic. In our other interior habitat area, with the sand cats, we saw a lot of bricks and stuff like that, so we couldn't really do it. But with this one, I think it worked really well. On top of that, we're using these aquatic beams to kind of hold and frame the windows, and despite the fact that they're aquatic, they actually worked really well. Now, I think it's about here that I realized that our overall interior terrain is not flat. And I'm not going to lie, this bothered me so much that I actually forgot to make sure that the interior terrain was flat. So lesson learned, need to make sure that we keep our eyes on that. It is a little bit of a frustration. I was planning on using concrete pads to kind of to cover the interior, and I decided against it because obviously we didn't want to have their feet clipping through. So we're going to live with the decisions that we've made. Now I'm adding in these columns as well. This is going to help break up the corners. Don't really want a whole lot of corners within this overall interior design. Really wanted to have it kind of fleshed out a little bit more. Now on top of that, we're going to utilize these additional North African tiles. We're going to go all the way through the exhibit, and the idea behind it was just to kind of break up the walls. If you were to look at it as it is right now, there's a lot of empty space on these walls, and this is probably the cleanest way that I could think of adding a little bit more feeling to the overall exhibit, and I'm quite happy with that. Now, it took a bit to get to this point. Turned out that I was quite happy with the way it actually worked out. Learned our lessons with and this is kind of where I realized that maybe our floor also wasn't flat in any of the areas. And then I stumbled across these keystones that I really like, these cones, and I decided to use them as our corner pieces on the exterior fences. And the reason why is those fences just don't really mesh very well together when it comes to the flat edges and the corners and stuff like that. So we utilize those cornerstones to kind of hold that together. And then this is where our terrariums kind of come into place. I played around with this a few times. You're actually going to see this build. I'm going to build this 3 times. Couldn't get the glass to work the way I wanted it. And you can kind of see playing around with it, decided it just wasn't going to work out, wasn't happy with it, deleted it all, and then did the exact same thing again. You know, color me a little ashamed of myself for this one. It took me a few tries, but I finally found something that I was quite happy with. And in watching this in hindsight, terrible idea on my part, but I think I figured out the issue, which was the stones weren't quite square. So we brought them together. Now the overlap in the glass actually works out. Normally you wouldn't get one single piece of glass that would be this large. And that's, you know, one, it's from a manufacturing perspective, it's not normal to do that. Number 2 is a replacement perspective. If somebody were to break the glass, you don't want to have to replace the entire pane, so you just replace the areas that actually needed to be replaced. Now in this case, the overlap creates the idea that there's a sealant that's actually holding those pieces of glass together. Now you can also see I just realized that our glass was not straight, so we had to kind of bring that together and make that a little bit straighter. Now we are utilizing mulch on the indoors because this is a terrarium. Obviously they wouldn't have any natural growth, so we used the mulch to kind of bring it together, and then we added in some plants. And it's very man-made. It's very you know, very rigid in terms of design, because when you're making something man-made, you're always going to naturally have that style within the build. And this is kind of where everything's starting to, again, come together for the interior. We're seeing it kind of pick up. I also decided that I want to bring these tiles up a little bit. The idea behind this, again, break up the monotony or the emptiness that is that wall. It took a little bit to get there, but it turned out really well. And this is really kind of what brought it together. Now, I decided to do the same thing on the outside because we need to make sure that the outside, you know, just as it's just as empty there, and it, you know, decided to play around with it and make it work out. Again, same idea. We needed to kind of fix the interior by the windows. Didn't really you know, anticipate the windows working the way they were supposed to, so it eventually comes together. Now, on top of that, really wanted to put some type of fixture in the center here. I found this item. We've used it before. I'm not very happy with how it turned out though, and the reason why obviously is the little bit of clipping you see from the plaster wall versus this plaster fixture. Just doesn't quite work the way we wanted it to, but it is a growing pain and maybe something I can learn. If you guys have an alternative, let me know. Drop a comment and let me know, maybe there was something else I could have done to bring this together. We're finally getting there. Now the interior, we're kind of finishing it up a little bit, and really what it is kind of wanted to add a little bit more to the corners, so that's where these rocks came in to kind of break it up and give it a little bit more natural vegetation, and then we wanted something in the center to kind of bring it all together. Now when it comes to Fennec Foxes, there's this really cool little fixture, and I placed 2 of them, and the idea behind it was to be that they're circling each other on top of this rock. I thought it was look really cool, and kind of made it work out. So that becomes our overall interior. Now this is the struggle that I actually got really upset with myself. I don't know what I did here, and I to this day I'm not going to be able to figure it out. I really wanted to have some type of backstage area. This would be where our research buildings were going to be located. I was going to add an extra research building, and then I was also going to add the keeper set. So in building it, decided that I wanted to kind of keep it all in one piece, and then I added this second little bit to kind of cover all those stones that were coming through, and then you can kind of see the struggle that I had with the exhibit. And the issue, and you can kind of see I'm struggling here. I'm trying to get the keeper set to get it. I'm trying to get it in there the way it's supposed to be, and I can't get it flat. I can get it under the sand, I can get it above the sand, but I can't get it on the sand without it actually either going above or underneath the overall exhibit. So kind of went back and forth on this a little bit, and then I just ultimately decided to build an entirely separate building specifically for these items, and it was frustrating to say the least. But suffice to say, it's a learning experience. Once I figure out what happened there, I'm going to make sure that we learn from it. So I decided to instead build this separate building, and made it a little bit bigger. And we're going to add in our keeper site, and we're also going to add in our research buildings. We're going to have 2 research buildings because we really need to start focusing on research. It's probably the one thing I've forgotten or I've let slide a lot in this overall series. So we're bringing it together, and this is how we're going to do it. We're going to make it look a little bit nicer, add in the plaster walls and everything like that. So the path that we saw that we laid down, the idea behind it is that, as we expand the zoo, we actually may use this as a jumping point for our exterior, or for our staff to kind of travel around. And that was the entire idea behind it. So we laid down the foundations, or the future foundations, for some additional staff pathing in the background. Same idea as normal. We'll have our lip from an exterior wall perspective, and then kind of place down the roof. Now, in hindsight, I kind of wish we put like a skylight over the viewing area to kind of get in more of that natural light. I actually may go back and do that, and depending on how it looks, we'll go from there. Now, I wanted to break up the interior walls as well, but obviously we can't put tiles. Tiles are not good for Fennec Foxes. If they were to kind of pull it off, sharp objects, just not going to work out for them. So then I decided, why not do something with some wood? Now, the idea behind it is Fennec Foxes, they're foxes. They're naturally going to, want to, rub their claws against this wood. The entire idea behind it, there's a few reasons for it. It allows them to keep their claws short. It gives them something to kind of do and stay engaged, and that was the idea. Now, I initially decided that I was going to put this all the way around, and then with the way that the fence walls that I built were working, it just wasn't going to work out very well. So I decided instead just to put it around the interior section of our exhibit to kind of break it up again, because those are where the tall walls are. And it actually worked out really well. So we have these multi-staged planks kind of just breaking up the wall just a little bit, and it kind of comes together. Now, on top of that, when it comes to this lip, I again use the aquatic beam to kind of bring everything together, add a little bit more depth and 3D-ness to this overall build, and then extended it all the way through the inside. In doing so, it actually turned out really well, and it's probably more in depth than I've ever really kind of gone. And then I rotated it around. We would naturally see with this type of build, it would be an entire beam, and it would be a very heavy, very thick beam that would actually hold this exhibit ceiling up, because there's not enough support there as is. So finally adopted our first 2 Fennec Foxes. We're going to bring them right in because I was really concerned about the size, wanted to make sure that it was actually going to fit. And then we started placing down all of our enrichment items. Found this log that they could kind of run through. I'm really excited to see them do that. I'll have to just sit back and watch that overall behavior kind of go through, and then went from there. We don't have a whole lot to place down. Now, I also thought about maybe putting this hut, like the underground area where they could sleep, and then I was going to put it in there so that, just in case they would have enough room. Decided against it because I couldn't get it to kind of sit very well. And then, of course, with these logs, wanted to add a little bit more to it. And the idea behind it was to place these dead logs around, and this would kind of help to give it a little bit more feel and natural aspect to the overall exhibit. Started placing down our donation bins before I realized, hey, I actually have one that's already been dyed and changed the color of, and I want to use that. So place them all around, and really started to outline the overall walkway with our stone rocks, and it's slowly coming together with exactly what I wanted to see, and it's coming together. Now, in hindsight, with where I placed the donation bins just didn't quite work out, so I had to remove those and move them forward a little bit. But in checking the Fennec Foxes, they're happy. They have enough. They have enough area to kind of travel around, and they have all the foliage they could want. In fact, they're actually a little bit upset with the amount of plants they have, but it's not detrimental to their overall behavior, so we're going to go ahead with it. So we placed down our education board, and then really decided I wanted to kind of put something here in the center. Originally, I had an idea of utilizing these glass, I thought they were glass bricks, didn't really work out. And then I stumbled across this unique fixture, which is the Fennec Fox statues. And I thought, hey, because it's a Fennec Fox exhibit, why not use these on the ends to, border the door? And then I found this window frame, and I used the window frame. And it actually worked out to add a little bit more flavor to this overall wall, and it actually it turns out really well. I'm very happy with how that added up. Do eventually end up bringing this all the way around the exhibit so that it's carried all the way through. It took me a little bit to get there, but it worked out. Now, decided to extend this beam through the top. Normally, I would use the round beams from North Africa set, but I actually like the way that this looked, and it gave it a little bit more of a heavier feel. So decided to go ahead with this one instead. You can kind of see some of the issues with the plaster walls. You can kind of see them clipping through a little bit, and this wood beam actually did a really good job in kind of covering that as well. We're finally placing down all of our exhibits, our tiles all the way through. And you can kind of see that we're learning our lesson in terms of utilizing multiple pieces and then just copying them all the way through. And don't worry, I definitely noticed those rocks that are sticking to the walls, and eventually get around to fixing them before going all the way through. Now we are getting to the end, near the end of this overall build, and at the end of the day, Oasis Zoo is always focused on creating these somewhat natural habitats that are going to be both pleasing for our guests and, of course, going to be a home that our new animals within our zoo would actually enjoy. And I'm quite happy with the way that this turned out. Very happy with utilizing the pieces that we did have to make it a little bit more wholesome. We utilized the beams again to kind of create a doorway here for the entrance to the overall exhibit. I actually like the way that this door actually worked with the top beam kind of sticking out. And then I thought about adding these Fennec Foxes items all the way through. It was a terrible idea. So instead, what I decided to do was to add these to the anchor points on the corners and give it a little bit more of a unique feel. And it's almost like it's becoming a temple to the Fennec Fox. And I am very happy with the way that turned out. Also added in these beams here as well, just to kind of soften the edges so they're not as sharp and harsh. And it worked out really well. Now, I'm a little concerned with how this looks, so decided to add in some tiling here as well to kind of, again, just break up a little bit of the overall emptiness that this wall became, and it worked out really well. So we are coming close to the end of this build, and I think Oasis Zoo has really been focusing on education for our guests, as well as just kind of keeping a natural habitat for our animals in our exhibit. So we really wanted to focus on kind of creating something that'd be, pleasing to our guests, and keeping in mind the need to provide something that's a little bit like a home away from home for our animals. And I'm quite happy with the way that this build turned out. I'm going to end it off here, my commentary anyway. So as always, feel free to leave a comment, drop a like, let me know what you think of this build, and if you really want to subscribe, it helps me out, lets me know I'm doing a good job. And if you're feeling up to it, join the Discord. Really focusing on just having a fun area where we can all chat Planet Zoo and other games. It's not just about Planet Zoo sometimes. So feel free to join if you're up to it. If not, that's totally cool as well. As always, though, I just want to say thank you very much for those who have watched. I started this off and as a way to, spend my time during, the COVID lockdown, things like that. And I'm over the moon with the turnout from my overall build and stuff like that, and the feedback that I've been getting. And I just want to say thank you very much to everybody. And of course, ciao for now.